most of the hypnosis that goes on in this world is not from professional hypnotists like me and my wife. It's from, the media and other forms of intentional or unintentional harmful info. And those things all have, like social media, very, very strong hypnotic force that can wreak a lot of havoc on society, as we're seeing.
Todd, when you work with people, you put them in a state of suggestion where they're able to kind of correct these things. What is the best methodology that you're able to do this? How are you able to get them in a state where your suggestions and your work has a powerful effect as opposed to them being in waking consciousness, doing affirmations daily, doing work daily? What is it about your process or the hypnotic process in general that allows for things to happen in a rather quickly fashion?
As I describe it, and I'm not the only one, but this is a simple way of thinking about what hypnosis is. This kind of hopefully will demystify a lot of the misconceptions around it. It is simply a state of accelerated learning or unlearning. And most of the work I do is actually helping people unlearn things they learned in their life that are limiting them. So relaxation is not necessary for hypnosis to take place. As I mentioned, I didn't mention specifically, but basically advertisements and even the news often puts people into a hypnotic state. People experience hypnosis on their own every day, playing video games, reading a novel, if people even still read, watching a movie. Responding emotionally is a sign of emotional suggestibility. So if their heart rate accelerates when they're watching a horror movie, or they start to cry when they're watching a romance or something like that, that's a sign that they're hypnotized. So hypnosis is a completely natural and safe experience that most people go in and out of a number of times a day. And it's simply just a normal state of consciousness. It's often referred to as an altered state, but that's only from the frame of reference of the one we're using right now. So when I use it, I use a variety of different methods, all of which can facilitate a state of hypnosis, which the person does on their own anyway. But when I'm working with someone, I want to be able to accelerate that process or initiate it more easily. Now, usually relaxation is an important part of it. It's much easier than chasing someone down the street trying to hypnotize them. I'm joking, of course, but relaxation, physical relaxation is not necessary. Even mental relaxation is not, but that's one way of doing it. And it sure as hell is better for business and for client relations than trying to scare the crap out of them. But if you try to scare someone, they become open to feedback, instruction, direction from some perceived authority figure. Now, with my clients, they are allowing me to lead them in a metaphorical dance where I'm leading and they're following. And as long as we both want that process to continue, then it continues to their benefit. If either they or I want to end it, then it will end. So hypnosis is not mind control. It's not sleep. There's nothing scary or harmful about it. It is simply a natural state of heightened receptivity to outside influence, or inside if the person is doing self-hypnosis. But when it comes to media and fear, Ryan, I mentioned 9/11, so that's like a macro event, and a micro event is someone who gets severely injured and a first responder shows up on the scene, or someone else does, like at a car accident, for example. That person is, whether they're watching the news after a terrorist attack and they're hoping the government or someone will protect them, or the individual who might be going into shock from blood loss, both of those situations are ones where what they're hearing from the influential party, whether it's the paramedic or the president of the United States, whatever, is really, really critical. And usually due to, I would like to think, ignorance rather than malice, the person conveying that information might be sending a harmful signal. So if the paramedic were to say, "Oh my God, I've never seen so much blood," probably not going to be good for the person who's injured to hear. Now, it doesn't mean you be a Pollyanna and say, oh, that's just a little scratch, no problem, because they're not going to believe that. There needs to be an empowering way to deliver the message, the same way that an oncologist can deliver an empowering prognosis, and as opposed to saying, oh, I'm sorry, you have 6 months to live. And a lot of people responding to what's called a medical hex will die on command in 6 months if they see their doctor as the head authority. So when people are afraid after a terrorist attack or some, even a local threat, there's a serial killer on the loose in whatever city.
Mm.
People's minds open, and this is actually out of self-protection, because if you think about where we came from in tribal environments, there were leaders or there were other people who were older and knew more. And when we're in danger, we need someone to give us input. And most people are followers, not leaders. So they're going to be hoping someone can solve their confusion and tell them what to do. Now, if that person knows what's in everyone's best interest, then they can give them constructive and empowering feedback, which will be useful. If not, they can manipulate them. Most of the hypnosis that goes on in this world is, and it's $150 billion market, as I've often said, but it's not, and the number just keeps going up, but it's not to people like me, it's to the makers of video games and movies and media, because all of those things are hypnotic experiences. And that's why it's so important that people guard what they let into their mind. The damage, the risk is not from professional hypnotists like me and my wife. It's from, the media and other forms of intentional or unintentional harmful info. And those things all have, like social media, very, very strong hypnotic force that can wreak a lot of havoc on society, as we're seeing. So ultimately, most of the work that I do, just to play on the word here, is actually dehypnotizing people from the hypnotic states that they have found themselves in due to their own life experiences and due to the exposures they've had from media or other content, whether it's a trauma with a big T or just a little t, like their dad yelled at them when they were a kid and said they would never amount to anything, and that's affecting their ability to build a business. So pretty much everyone has some unresolved issue that's probably limiting them or harming them in some way in their life. And no matter what that is, it's possible to unlearn the mindset or the belief system that led to the emotional and behavioral effects. And when that happens, it's like pulling the weeds in the garden out by the roots. Once that happens, the entire weed is gone if it's removed effectively, and it will not come back. There may be other weeds that will grow in the future, but most of the weeds we have in our garden come from childhood or adolescence, and those can be unlearned. And then a person can improve their self-worth and their self-respect and their feeling of empowerment and fulfillment. And it's not through positive thinking, it's through restoring balance within the mind.